the kingdom that dreamed beneath the sand. It is said that some questions arrive not as sounds, but as a soft trembling in the air, like the sigh of a candle before it goes out. And tonight, carried on the hush between heartbeats, a question drifts across the threshold of your thoughts. What sleeps beneath a land that remembers more than we do? Beneath the moon's pale arc, the desert stretches outward like an ancient tapestry of dust and breath. At this hour, when the sky leans close to the earth, the dunes seem to inhale and exhale with a slow, eternal rhythm. There is a softness to their movement, as though the sand itself is dreaming. Each grain glimmers faintly in the moonlight, tiny sparks of memory, tiny syllables of an unwritten language once whispered by a forgotten empire. You walk gently into this silver-washed expanse, and the air around you feels warm, patient, expectant. A wind stirs, very faint, very old, and it curls around your ankles with the tenderness of a long-lost guide. It carries the scent of minerals, baked by centuries of sun, and the faintest trace of incense, the kind used in rituals before recorded time. The wind leads you towards stones half buried in the sand, their surfaces scraped by centuries of weather, yet still bearing inscriptions that shimmer like ghost light. Spirals, stars, feathers carved into the stone with hands that believed every symbol held the breath of a god. Whispers tell us that this land once held a kingdom so radiant, it seemed to be woven not merely from earth and stone, but from the very fabric of the night sky. Some described it as a sanctuary, where human thought mingled with the celestial. Others believed its towers were placed intentionally along the pathways of constellations, so that when the stars moved, the city glowed with a direction of its own, like a compass for the spirit. But now, moonlight is the only crown the kingdom wears. Its ruins lie scattered like broken verses of a poem once memorized by time. You kneel beside one of the half-buried stones. Its surface is cool, almost damp, as though it has held onto the night's breath. The markings along its edge curl like tides, echoing a civilization that saw the world not as a set of borders, but as a rhythm, an ongoing conversation between sand and starlight. Some symbols resemble maps, not of geography, but of belief. A path winding toward a circle, a spiral that unfurls into a small star. A square divided by a single line, as if marking the threshold between seen and unseen. You run your fingers lightly across the carvings, careful not to disturb the delicate grains clinging to them. The stone hums with a soft stillness, and for a moment, you feel as though the kingdom beneath the sand is listening to you in return. Far ahead, on the horizon, a faint outline emerges. At first, it appears to be an illusion, just another ripple of the land. But as you step closer, its presence becomes undeniable. A temple, sunken so deeply that only the upper edge of its archway remains visible. This is no ordinary ruin. The stone is smooth, polished even after centuries of wind. Its edges curve upward like a gesture toward the heavens, and the angle of its remaining walls aligns perfectly with the moon's current position, as if the architecture still honors celestial cycles long after its creators have fallen silent. It is said that the people of this lost kingdom worship not gods of thunder or conquest, but gods of memory, gods who kept watch over stories, echoes, and the fragile threads that bind the past to the living. They believed every soul carried within it a spark of ancient origins, and that the desert was not a barren wasteland, but a vast library of the earth's earliest dreams. You step through the half-buried archway, and the temperature shifts around you. The air cools, becomes thicker, and carries a faint vibration like the tail end of a distant chant. The chamber you enter is shallow, yet it feels infinite, as though space bends gently around its silence. Sand coats the floor in soft mounds, and you can almost imagine robed figures seated here in long semicircles, their voices rising in harmonies shaped by star law. On the far wall, partially obscured by centuries of dust, lies a mural. Its pigments, faded copper, earth red, soft turquoise, still cling to the stone in patterns that shimmer under the moonlight, leaking through the broken ceiling. The mural depicts a procession, figures walking in a line that grows smaller and smaller until it disappears into a distant horizon. But the figures are not painted in human form. Their bodies resemble gentle curves of wind. Their faces are left blank, as if the kingdom believed that identity was not defined by appearance, but by the echoes one left behind. Beneath the mural rests a stone bowl, cracked yet still holding a thin layer of powder. When the wind slips through the opening above, the powder stirs, rising like pale smoke before settling again. Some believe this dust came from crushed starstones, minerals that fell from the sky in a meteor storm thousands of years ago. Others suggest it was the remains of sacred offerings, burned in ceremonies where priests spoke directly to the heavens, with voices calm enough to move the very air. The desert outside murmurs again, urging you deeper. Beyond the chamber lies a narrow corridor, its ceiling low, its walls carved with symmetrical patterns resembling waves, spirals, and feathers. You move slowly, feeling the cool stone brush against your shoulders. The air is still, but not lifeless. It feels like a breath waiting to be released. When you emerge into the next room, the sight pulls you into stillness. A vast circular hall spreads before you, its roof partially collapsed, letting in beams of moonlight that fall like pale waterfalls across the sand-covered floor. Statues, tall, robed, faceless, stand in a perfect ring around the room. Though worn and chipped, they maintain an unspoken presence, as though they have been guarding this space since the first grains of sand settled around their feet. Each statue holds an object in its hands. Some clutch smooth orbs, others long feathers, and one cradles a disc carved with a pattern resembling ocean waves. These were not idols, it seems, but symbols of a philosophy that valued balance between light and shadow, between memory and forgetting, between the things we name and the things we allow to remain nameless. Somewhere deep beneath this hall, legends say, lies the true heart of the kingdom, a sealed chamber, untouched by time, where the kingdom's final story sleeps. The story of why an empire so attuned to the heavens and the rhythms of the earth disappeared without a single inscription explaining its fate. Perhaps it was an exodus. Perhaps it was a chosen retreat into the realm of Pirit. Or perhaps the kingdom simply grew tired of being seen. Whispers tell us that on certain nights, when the moon hangs low and the dunes shimmer like water, faint footprints appear along the sand, leading toward the heart of the ruins. Footprints that vanish upon approach. Footprints no wind seems able to erase. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the silence of the hall settle around you. It is a silence filled not with emptiness, but with the delicate weight of stories that have never been spoken aloud. You imagine the inhabitants standing here in quiet ceremony, their robes brushing softly against the floor, their faces lifted toward a sky they believed was alive. Some say their kingdom vanished because they achieved a kind of understanding too tranquil for ordinary existence. Others believe they listened so closely to the desert's breath that they followed it inward, dissolving into the very sand that once supported their temples. Beneath the silence, the wind returns. Light, wandering, familiar. It curls around your legs, rises to your chest, and then sweeps across the hall. Grains of sand shimmer as they scatter, landing in small circular patterns at the feet of the statues. And for a breath, you almost feel the kingdom awakening, stretching gently from its long slumber, eager not to be revealed, but to be remembered quietly. When you step back into the open night, the desert has changed color. The moon has shifted, casting long silver shadows that point toward unseen horizons. You pause, letting the cool night wash over you. The dunes flutter softly, as though 1,000 hidden pages are turning in an invisible book. And perhaps they are, for the kingdom beneath the sand has not disappeared. It has merely changed the way it speaks, no longer through pillars of stone or chants beneath starlight, but through the whispers of drifting dunes, through the delicate ache of memory, through the faint hum of something ancient pressing gently against the edges of thought. As you take one final look across the moonlit desert, you realize the truth. Some kingdoms are not lost. They simply wait for listeners soft enough to hear them. And tonight, in the hush before sleep, you have heard them. The river that carried the first stories. It is said that every river has a beginning, but only a few remember why they began. And tonight, beneath a sky washed in moon-pale silver, we step toward one such river. A ribbon of ancient water that seems less like part of the world and more like the world's first whisper. The night is soft here. The air moves gently, as though careful not to disturb the silence resting along the riverbank. A thin mist floats above the surface, like a veil drawn by unseen hands. And the moon pours its light into the water so quietly that the entire landscape feels suspended between waking and dream. This is where the journey begins. On the edge of a waterway believed by some to be older than memory, older than the oldest word, older even than the first spark of thought. Some call it the Mother River, others the River of Origins, and a few ancient texts speak of it only as the listener. For it was here, according to old stories, that the earliest voices of humanity leaned close to the water and let their fears and hopes drift downstream like petals set afloat on a midnight tide. Tonight, under a moon marked by faint halos, you stand at its edge. Reeds rise in clusters along the banks, their slender bodies swaying gently in the night breeze. They move with such softness, such fragile intention, that they resemble scribes, the last keepers of stories no tablet ever recorded. Each reed leans forward, as if listening. Each shadow stretches across the water, as if writing upon its surface with strokes of darkness and light. It is said these reeds once carried the rustle of ancient languages, their trembling echoes forming the earliest hymns, the first myths, the first breath of narrative the world had ever known. To watch them now, bathed in moonlight, is to feel the hush of a forgotten classroom where the world itself once learned how to speak. You kneel beside the water, letting your fingers brush the cool surface. For a moment, the river seems still, But as your hand withdraws, faint ripples appear, circular, widening, fading, like messages traveling outward through time. Some believe the river remembers every touch, every offering, every gaze. Beneath its surface, they say, sleep the fragments of prayers whispered by aunts long turned to dust. Pieces of stories carried so far downstream that the currents themselves became storytellers. And so, you rise, allowing your steps to match the slow ancient rhythm of the water. The river guides you deeper into its realm, past a gentle bend where the starlight scatters across its surface like broken glass from a celestial mirror. Here, half hidden in the reeds, rests the first shrine. It is nothing more than a small stone platform, its edges softened by centuries of rain and sun, its carvings faint enough to be mistaken for mere scratches. But if you lean closer, if you let your eyes adjust to the quiet language of weathered stone, you see them. Markings shaped like spirals, like tiny waves, like the outlines of fish gliding between worlds. Whispers tell us that this was once a place where travelers stopped to leave offerings to the river. A handful of grain, a feather, a simple clay bead. Not gifts of wealth, but gifts of remembrance. For the people who lived along this waterway believed that stories were alive, that they needed nourishment, like fire needs air, like bodies need sleep. You touch the edge of the shrine, and the stone feels warm, as though it still holds the heat of ancient hands. A hush settles around you, so still that even the river seems to slow. Above, stars gather behind drifting clouds, their soft light turning the world into a quiet chamber of silver darkness. As you continue along the bank, the river widens, its surface smoothing into a sheet of glass that reflects the world with a clarity more honest than sight itself. Half-crumbling tablets lie scattered near the shore, their surfaces once covered in lines and symbols, now reduced to gentle shadows. The faintest indentations suggest shapes. A crescent moon, a mountain ridge, perhaps even human figures walking in procession. Each fragment feels like a sentence torn from a very old book. Its meaning incomplete yet strangely whole. Some tablets appear hardly touched by time. Others crumble at a breath. You imagine the hands that carved them, artists who did not think of themselves as artists, only as keepers of something sacred. In forgotten corners of the world, scholars have long debated why so many early civilizations chose to build themselves beside water. Why the earliest settlements, the earliest rituals, the earliest tales emerged along rivers like this. But here, under the hum of moonlight and reed dream, the answer feels as soft and simple as breath. Water listens, water remembers, and water carries stories farther than feet ever could. You step closer to the edge, watching the ripples drift outward. The river moves with such patience that it seems to inhale each sound of the night. The faint chirp of insects, the rustle of reeds, the quiet tapping of stones shifting beneath the current. It is easy to imagine that the river is thinking, that the currents are not mere movements, but thoughts drifting from one era into the next, carrying wisdom that words struggle to hold. A gentle breeze sweeps across the landscape, and for a moment, you hear something within the wind, a murmur, a syllable, a soft echo of something older than language. Perhaps it is only the reeds brushing together. Perhaps it is something more. Soon, The river curves toward a stretch where fallen pillars lie partially submerged in the water. These are the remains of a shrine once devoted to the earliest storytellers. Figures who blended myth with observation, dream with memory, belief with the soft reality of everyday life. At the base of one broken pillar, a carving remains almost untouched by time. It depicts a hand holding a small spiral. The spiral a symbol of breath, of continuity, of ideas unfolding through ages. Beneath the hand, another symbol, the outline of a clay pot sinking into water. Some say this image represents the first offering made to the river. A simple vessel filled not with treasure, but with words that etched along its inner walls. Words offered not for glory, but for safekeeping. You imagine the pot descending slowly, turning gently as it sank, its message dissolving into the currents like sugar in warm tea. And you wonder whether the river still carries those messages, still whispers their fragments beneath the surface, where moonlight cannot reach. The deeper into the night you walk, the more the world softens. Shapes blur, sounds stretch. The river becomes a companion, a guide, a witness to the unfolding hush of ancient time. In the distance, shadows part to reveal a cluster of stones rising from the earth. The remnants of an early settlement, its outlines faint beneath layers of dust. Homes once stood here, their walls woven from reeds and river clay. Children once played here, their feet leaving prints in the soft mud. Families once gathered beneath torchlight, their voices weaving tales that grew and grew until they became myths. Stories so beloved, so essential, that they drifted from one generation to the next, like seeds carried by wind. But now, only the foundations remain. A single pot lies on its side, half filled with silt. A broken roof beam leans against a tree root, its wood etched with faint spirals. These remnants feel neither sad nor abandoned. They feel like pages from a book allowed to close gently. It is said that the people who lived here believed time was not a straight path forward, but a circle, a soft turning, like the moon's quiet journey around the earth, like water spinning in the hollow of a palm. And so their stories always flowed, never fixed, never rigid, never bound by the pressure to be exact. Their stories lived the way rivers do, changing shape with each retelling, each tide, each breath. As you move further along the river's path, the trees grow denser, vines hang low, draping the banks in a curtain of green shadow. The air grows cooler, filled with the scent of wet earth and distant blossoms. Here, the river seems deeper, its currents darker, its voice quieter. Whispers tell us that this part of the river was once believed to be the threshold between the world of the living and the world of memory. People came here not to speak, but to listen. And so you pause, closing your eyes, letting the river speak in its slow, ancient cadence. Minutes pass, or perhaps only seconds. Time here feels tender, folded, as though softened by the very stories it carries. When you open your eyes again, mist begins to gather across the water, rising in thin tendrils that twist like ink drifting through clear water. The river narrows, its surface turning glassy and motionless. The moonlight fades behind a veil of cloud, and the air trembles with a stillness sacred as a held breath. This is the place where stories, after traveling through centuries, quietly rest, not ending, only resting. You stand in silence, sensing the weight of all that has passed through this waterway. Prayers wrapped in leaves, words carved into reeds, fears whispered into cupped hands, hopes breathed into clay vessels. Perhaps the river remembers them all. Perhaps it carries them still, moving their echoes through its depths until the world is gentle enough for them to rise again. As the mist thickens, your footsteps soften. The river's voice fades to a hum. The reeds sway in long, slow arcs, as though bowing in gratitude. And somewhere beneath the surface, beneath the silence, where memory fades into moonlit dark, you sense the stories drifting, quiet, patient, waiting for a listener with a heart slow enough, soft enough, still enough to hear them. Tonight, you are that listener, and as sleep draws close, the river begins its final lullaby. Gentle, ancient, carrying the first stories into the quiet chambers of your dreaming mind. The city that listened to the moon. It is said that some cities were born from sunlight, but a rare few were born from the moon. And tonight, under a sky washed in silver hush, you stand before the remnants of one such place. A city that did not merely shine beneath the night, but listened to it. A faint breath of wind drifts across the plain, carrying with it the cool scent of stone and the soft traces of forgotten incense. Before you lies a scattering of rooftops, washed in pale moonlight, their shapes softened by centuries of dust. Each stone, even in ruin, feels tuned to the heavens as though carved with an ear turned upward. This is the city that listened to the moon, a sanctuary once revered as a place where darkness was not feared, but welcomed. Not as an absence of light, but as a teacher offering its quiet lessons to those patient enough to hear. You step forward, and the first rooftop glows faintly beneath the moon's gentle gaze. It is smooth, curved like the back of a sleeping whale, and across its surface runs a thin line of carvings, arcs, crescents, spirals, symbols shaped not by chance, but by an ancient mind in harmony with the slow turning of celestial time. As the moon rises higher, those carvings catch the light, shimmering like ink awakening on old parchment. Whispers tell us that in this city, every stone had a purpose. Nothing was built without listening first to the sky. You wander through the city's pathways, their edges softened, their borders blurred. Dust drifts across them like pale breath, forming small dunes that shift in the faint breeze. Here and there, fragments of columns rise, some leaning, some broken clean through, but all arranged with a discernible rhythm, as if even in their fall they maintain the harmony once built into their foundations. It is said that the inhabitants of this city believed the moon was a mirror for the soul, that its phases revealed truths which sunlight's boldness often concealed. They held gatherings at dusk, not to celebrate endings, but to honor the unfolding quiet that came with the night. Poets stood before the people and spoke of crescents like slender hopes, full moons like open hearts, waning moons like gentle farewells. But now, silence sits in their place. You pause where a small square once lay. Stone benches curve around a central pedestal, its top cracked, its sides worn smooth. Beneath your hand, you feel faint lines, perhaps the ghost of an inscription. You trace it with your fingertips, as though coaxing memory from the stone's tired bones. It is said that upon this pedestal lay a single white sphere carved from crystal, a sphere used in lunar meditations. When the moonlight struck it, it cast beams across the square in soft arcs that resembled pathways through the night sky. Some believe the sphere still exists, buried beneath layers of sand. Others say the sphere vanished on the last night the people gathered here, consumed by the moon itself in a moment of quiet magic or quiet surrender. You breathe deeply and follow the path that curves out of the square and into a narrow corridor of stone. Its walls rise on either side, tall yet comforting, like guardians ushering travelers towards some sacred chamber. At the corridor's end stands a tall archway carved from pale stone. Its frame is decorated with symbols, half-moons, spirals, and delicate patterns, like woven threads of starlight. The archway faces east, not toward the rising sun, but toward the direction where the moon ascends in winter. This alignment was intentional, designed so that each year on a single night, the moon would rise and pour its silver breath straight through the arch and into the heart of the temple behind it. You step beneath the arch and enter what remains of that temple. The floor is covered in dust, its tiles cracked, its columns fallen like exhausted giants. And yet, the room still carries a sense of profound stillness. The stillness of a place that once knew the quiet language of celestial rhythms. The ceiling has collapsed in places, creating windows where moonlight spills down in beams like liquid silver. The light touches the broken stones, and for a moment, you can almost imagine the temple restored, filled with warm bodies, soft chants, faces lifted toward the sky. It is said this temple was a place where people came not to plead, but to listen. They believed the moon did not require offerings or praise, only attention. And that in giving attention, they opened the hidden chambers of their own hearts. In the far corner of the temple lies a pedestal shaped like a crescent. Its curves are smooth, though the stone is cracked, and at its center rest faint flecks of silver embedded deep into the surface. Scholars once speculated these flecks were remnants of meteor fragments, starstones collected and sanctified by the city's earliest astronomers. But legends say the flecks were tears shed by the moon on nights when it drew too close to the earth. You linger here, feeling the presence of centuries hover like a breath against your skin. Then you wander deeper. Beyond the temple lies an open courtyard. The moonlight rests across it like a woven cloth, soft and shimmering. Broken steps curve downward into a shallow basin now filled with dust and small stones, but once filled with water that reflected the moon so perfectly that it appeared as though two moons shone upon the city every night. Some called this basin the mirror of stillness. Others called it the second sky. You imagine the people gathering here, priests in quiet robes, children sitting cross-legged, their eyes reflecting silver. Perhaps they watched the moon drift through the water's surface and listened to the ripples to divine the shape of coming days. But now, only silence speaks in its place. You kneel by the edge of the empty basin, running your hand along its cracked floor. A few tiny pebbles roll beneath your fingers, their edges softened by centuries of wind-whispered journeys. It is here that you feel the essence of the city most keenly. Not in the crumbled stones, nor in the faded symbols, but in the space between them. The whole city feels like an echo, a lingering note, a dream waiting just beneath the surface of waking. You rise and continue wandering. Narrow alleys lead to rooms that once belonged to scholars and poets. A fallen arch reveals a small chamber whose walls are carved with delicate curves, forming waves and stars. A scroll lies in the corner, its surface worn to near nothingness. But even in its fading, you sense its purpose. This city believed that knowledge was not meant to be proclaimed loudly, but absorbed gently, like moonlight on stone, like water seeping into sand. The deeper you walk, the more the night settles around your shoulders. The moon rises higher, casting its pale glow into every crevice, every silent room, every forgotten shrine. It is said that this city's wisdom did not die. It simply drifted away into the world like dust, settling quietly into distant cultures, influencing their myths, their rituals, their poetry in ways too subtle to be traced. But still, one question lingers like a half-heard note. Why did the people leave? Some believe a celestial sign warned them of something coming. Others say they reached a level of quiet understanding that made earthly life feel too heavy. Perhaps they followed the moon into some unseen realm. Or perhaps the city simply faded because the world was changing in ways that their gentle rhythm could no longer sustain. As the night deepens, a thin veil of cloud slides across the sky, softening the moon's light. The rooftops grow dimmer, the pathways blur. The temple arches melt into silhouette, and slowly, very slowly, the city begins to fall back into shadow. It feels almost intentional, as though the moon is tucking its beloved city back into slumber. You stand on a rise overlooking the ruins, watching the last glimmers of silver light touch the stones before fading into soft darkness. Here, beneath the silence, where memory fades and dreams begin, you feel the lingering breath of a people who once spoke with the night. The city is quiet now, but its listening continues. In the way the wind moves through broken corridors, in the way moonlight still pauses over the old stones, in the way your own heart slows as you stand in its presence. Perhaps the wisdom of this place was never meant to be found in full. Perhaps some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And tonight, under the moon's soft veil, you have heard them. The library carved from night itself. It is said that some places are born of stone and others of silence. But a rare few are born of night, and deep within an ancient slope of volcanic rock, beneath layers of cooled fire and forgotten centuries, there exists a chamber shaped not by hands, but by intention. A place whispered about in old pilgrim songs as the library, carved from night itself. Tonight, under the hush of a sky dressed in quiet starlight, you step toward its hidden threshold. A faint whisper rises in your thoughts, gentle, questioning, like a dream leaning close to speak. Can knowledge dream? The question drifts through you like a soft ember of thought and follows you as you descend a narrow path of dark stone. The air grows cooler, darker, thicker, as if holding its breath. At the base of the path, a vast doorway appears, its frame carved directly into the mountainside. No mortar, no bricks, only the smooth, dark sheen of volcanic stone shaped by forces older than human time. Across its arch, faint symbols flicker in the moonlight. Spirals, flowing lines, shapes that resemble stars falling toward Earth. Some believe these symbols mark the boundary between the world above and the world of knowledge below. Others say they are seals, placed by the founder of the library to keep its wisdom veiled until humanity grew gentle enough to receive it. With a slow breath, you step inside. The darkness welcomes you not with cold, but with a soft warmth. The warmth of old stone that has held the breath of centuries. Then, gradually, light begins to bloom. Small oil lamps shaped like stars tremble along the walls, their flames moving in delicate patterns, as if stirred by an unseen draft. Their glow spills across the chamber, revealing shelves and alcoves carved seamlessly from the black stone. Not constructed, but revealed as though the mountain itself had opened its ribs to offer wisdom. The chamber stretches wide, its ceiling lost in shadow, its edges fading into the soft darkness, like the horizon of a dream. You take a step forward, and the floor beneath you is cool and smooth, its surface marked with faint lines that trace the movements of constellations. When the lamps flicker, those lines come alive, mirroring the night sky above with quiet devotion. It is said this library was aligned to the motions of the heavens, that its corridors shift subtly with the turning of the stars, guiding seekers into chambers reflecting the knowledge their hearts unknowingly sought. You wander deeper. Scrolls line the carved shelves, their coverings made of delicate fibers, woven from unknown materials. Thin as silk, yet preserved with impossible grace. Some are wrapped in linen faded to dust-pale hues. Others lie open on stone pedestals, their ink shimmering like moonlight pressed into the page. As you approach one such scroll, you feel the air thicken with an almost sacred stillness. This scroll is a map, but not of any coastline you recognize. Its lines curve with an elegance that suggests lands that once existed and have since been swallowed by rising seas or shifting earth. Tiny symbols mark lost harbors, forgotten trade routes, islands that may have existed only in the imaginations of ancient navigators. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Or perhaps it waits patiently for someone ready to understand its purpose. You move on, your steps echoing softly in the cavernous hush. The air carries the faint scent of oil and aged parchment, a fragrance that feels both fragile and eternal. Another alcove opens to your right, revealing a series of tablets carved with images of figures standing beneath swirling halos of light. Their faces are serene, their hands raised toward the sky. Beneath them, delicate inscriptions speak of gods long forgotten, gods woven from breath and wind, gods who guided migrations across plains now lost to desert, gods who taught early peoples to watch the stars with reverence rather than fear. In one tablet, a figure kneels beside a river that flows with luminous curves as if filled with moonlit water. The inscription beneath speaks of a hymn sung to the keeper of tides, a deity believed to carry stories between generations. You step back, letting the imagery settle like a soft weight upon your thoughts. This library feels alive, not breathing, but remembering, as though the walls themselves recall every hand that has touched them, every scroll unrolled, every whisper offered to the dim chambers. You walk onward into a narrow corridor. Its ceiling dips low and the lamps grow sparse, casting long shadows that dance like slow-moving spirits. Some believe this corridor marks the transition from known knowledge to forbidden memory. Others say it simply deepens the quiet, so visitors can hear their own thoughts more clearly. The corridor widens, You emerge into a hall shaped like a crescent moon. Stone benches circle the room, their surfaces polished by ancient use. In the center, a low platform rises, its top carved with an intricate swirl that looks like the meeting of two opposing winds. On the platform sits a single object, a scroll bound with a strip of deep red cloth. When you draw near, the cloth glimmers faintly, as though threads of starlight have been woven into it. You do not open the scroll. You do not need to. Simply being near it fills the air with an unspoken gravity, a sense that the knowledge within holds the weight of civilizations beyond memory. Some whispers claim this scroll contains the thoughts of a people who lived before recorded time. Philosophies on balance between earth and sky. Methods for aligning one's breath to the rhythms of the moon. Teachings so subtle that reading them requires a mind willing to soften itself like water. Perhaps that is why the scroll remains sealed. You sit quietly beside the platform, feeling the stillness gather around you. In this moment, you understand why the founder of the library chose such a hidden place. Knowledge is powerful, but it is also delicate. It can be misused, misinterpreted, twisted by ambition. And so, it is said, the founder believed knowledge should sleep until humanity learned to listen without hunger for power, to receive wisdom with humility rather than desire. You rise and step into a side chamber. This room is smaller, its walls curving inward to form a gentle bowl. At its center stands a low stone basin filled with shimmering dust. Not ordinary dust, but particles that glint like flecks of crushed stars. When a breeze slips through the cracks in the wall, the dust stirs with a sound like quiet rain. Scholars once called this the breath of origins, believing the dust contained remnants of volcanic eruptions that predated human life. Others believed it carried memory, that inhaling even a trace could open glimpses of forgotten eras. But tonight, you simply watch it shift in the dim light, floating slowly like dreams rising from sleep. You leave the chamber and return to the main hall. The lamps seem dimmer now, their flames lowering as though preparing for a final bow. You sense that the library itself is guiding you toward an ending. Not a conclusion, but a gentle descent into deeper quiet. At the far end of the hall, a small alcove glows with the faintest flicker. Inside sits a single candle. Its flame wavers weakly, casting soft shadows across the stone walls. Near its base lies an inscription. Knowledge is not a ladder, it is a lantern. Hold it gently, for its light is meant to illuminate, not blind. You kneel before the candle and watch its flame tremble and shrink. For a moment, the entire library seems to inhale. And then, with a soft sigh, the candle goes dark. The chamber does not fall silent. Instead, it fills with a deeper, more enveloping quiet, the kind that feels like a soft veil being drawn over thought. You stand in the darkness, holding the weight of everything you've seen and everything left unseen. Perhaps knowledge does dream, not in the way minds do, but in the way mountains do, in the way night does. Slowly, quietly, waiting for the world to become still enough to hear its whisper. You turn and walk toward the entrance, the star-shaped lamps glimmering faintly behind you like lingering embers. Outside, the moon hangs low over the volcanic slopes, casting a pale glow across the land. The night feels softer now, as if carrying the breath of the library itself. In the distance, a breeze moves through the rocks, whispering a question that lingers in your mind. What wisdom have we forgotten? Because we were not quiet enough to hear it. No answer arrives, and perhaps none is needed. Some knowledge was never meant to be held fully, only brushed against like the wing of a passing nightbird. You step into the cool air, the darkness settling gently around your shoulders, and the library behind you seems to fade back into the night from which it came. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And tonight, in the hush before sleep, you have heard them. The shrine beneath the lake of mirrors. It is said that in forgotten valleys where the mountains lean close to listen, there lies a lake so still, so impossibly calm, that even the wind hesitates before crossing its surface. And tonight, under a sky washed in soft ash-blue dusk, you approach that lake, a vast, unbroken sheet of darkness stretching outward like polished obsidian. The moon hangs above it, unmoving, perfectly reflected, as if the water is not water at all, but a second sky, a softer sky, where stars sink instead of shine. This is the Lake of Mirrors, a place spoken of in half-remembered songs, in fragile scrolls left by wanderers, and in the quiet murmurs of elders who once stood beside its silver-black edge and felt their hearts slow to match the rhythm of the water. Here, beneath the silence, beneath the glassy veil of the lake, rests a shrine, a sanctuary swallowed whole by stillness itself. Its stones have not been touched by human hands for centuries. Its carvings have not felt sunlight since the night the waters rose and tucked the shrine into their cool embrace. Yet, if you listen carefully, if you soften your breath and let the hush of evening guide you inward, you may sense something. A faint echo, a memory drifting upward like a long-forgotten prayer. You step closer to the water's edge. The surface reflects your silhouette so sharply that for a moment you feel as though you are staring not at a reflection, but at another version of yourself, waiting beneath the glass in a world turned upside down. The lake's stillness is absolute. No ripple breaks its calm. No current disturbs its dark glow. Even the stars above seem to pause, unsure which sky is real and which is dreaming. Whispers tell us that pilgrims once travelled from distant realms to kneel at this shore. Not to seek miracles, not to demand answers, but to listen. For the people who lived here believed that water was the memory of the earth, a vast fluid archive containing every emotion, every fear, every whispered hope ever breathed in its presence. They believed the lake remembered those who approached it, and that if one listened closely enough, the water would whisper back. You kneel now, mirroring those ancient seekers, and feel the cool breath of the lake brush against your face. It smells of stone, of long-forgotten rain, and of something older. A hint of incense carried across ages. For a moment, you imagine the shrine as it once was. Not submerged, not hidden, but rising above the water, its pillars catching the moonlight, its mosaics shimmering like liquid stars, its priesthood gathered in soft robes woven from river reeds. Their rituals were simple, gentle. They listened to ripples, to the soft creaking of the water, to the way moonlight shifted across the surface. In those movements, they read the unspoken truths of the human heart. It is said that they never taught prophecy, only patience, only stillness, only the quiet understanding that most answers arrive only when the world around us grows silent enough to hear them. You inhale deeply, and the world around you seems to dim. The lake grows darker, more reflective, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, the surface begins to change. One ripple, just one, forms again at the far end of the water and moves toward you with the grace of a drifting petal. As it nears, the surface softens, as though inviting you in. And then, in the gentle quiet that follows that first ripple, you feel yourself being pulled into the lake's memory. Not physically, but in the way dreams pull us inward. Softly, silently, without resistance. The surface of the lake shimmers, and suddenly you are no longer beside the water. You are beneath it, not sinking, not drowning, but drifting weightless, as though carried by a current that is more thought than water. The shrine unfolds around you in muted blues and silver-grey shadows. Its pillars rise like ancient trees, their surfaces all carved with symbols that glow faintly in the filtered moonlight that reaches down from above. Some pillars stand whole. Others lean gently as though bowing beneath centuries of slumber. Between them, woven mosaics stretch across the floor. Patterns of spirals, waves, and celestial arcs that seem to shift as you watch them. The water swirls around the stones, slow and deliberate, as though performing the same graceful rituals once carried out by human hands. You drift through an archway where delicate carvings circle outward, like ripples expanding from a single drop. Beyond it lies a chamber whose walls shimmer with fragments of polished shells set into the stone. Each shell glints faintly, catching moonlight and releasing it back in subtle flashes that resemble distant stars blinking in a deep ocean sky. This was the Hall of Reflection, where priests once gathered to listen not only to the lake, but to the echoes of their own hearts. It is said that a question asked here returned not with an answer, but with a clarity, a soft illumination showing the shape of one's path. You linger in this chamber, letting the quiet settle. There is a peace here that feels ancient, patient, and kind. A peace that asks nothing but presence. Slowly, you drift toward the central altar. It rises from the floor like the spine of a great stone whale, smooth and pale beneath centuries of water. On its surface rests a mosaic of a single perfect moon. Its shape formed from tiny tile carved from river pearls. Around this moon spiral lines that seem to rise from the stone like breaths frozen in time. Perhaps this shrine was less a place of worship and more a sanctuary of understanding. A place where the people believed the moon, the water, and the human spirit were bound in quiet companionship. But then, as you drift above the altar, a change comes over the water. It grows darker, heavier, thicker, as though stirred by the memory of a night that shifted everything. For though the shrine was once open to the air, illuminated by moonlight and surrounded by chanting pilgrims, one night the lake rose silently and swallowed it whole. No storm caused it. No flood was recorded. Only a sudden absolute stillness fell across the valley, and when dawn came, the shrine was gone. The chronicles say little, only that the water became too calm, too perfect, as though guarding something that chose to descend rather than be lost. Perhaps the shrine sank because its people felt their time ending. Perhaps the water itself pulled it downward to keep its wisdom safe. Or perhaps As some elders whisper, the shrine knew that silence was the only way to preserve truth. You rise slowly, guided by the current of the dream water around you. The pillars fade upward into shadow, their carved spirals dissolving into soft blue gloom. And then, with a shimmering breath, the surface of the lake pulls you gently upward. A moment later, you stand once more at the water's edge. The air is still. The mountains lean in. The moon floats above the lake, like a single white seed resting on glass. You exhale. The sound is soft, almost lost in the vast quiet. Beneath the silence, you sense the shrine still resting in its liquid cradle. Not lost, not forgotten, but simply sleeping beneath a veil of peace. Some truths, it seems, remain submerged because they prefer stillness over revelation. You watch the lake for a while longer, letting its calm seep into you, letting your breath match its breath. And slowly, the world softens. The stars blur, the mountains dim, and the night folds around you like a gentle tide. Perhaps, in some distant hour, the shrine will rise again. Perhaps it never will. But tonight, you understand why it sank. Some wisdom is meant to rest in quiet depths, waiting for hearts still enough to hear its echo. And as sleep draws near, the lake remains unmoving. A mirror turned toward the heavens, holding the moon like a secret it has kept for far too long. The map that led into Shadow and Starlight. It is said that some maps are drawn to guide the feet, while others are drawn to guide the soul. And tonight, in the dim hush of a forgotten chamber, you stand before one such map, a sheet of ancient parchment that stirs as though breathing in the lantern's soft glow. The chamber around you smells of old dust and cedar oil, of stories sealed away for generations. Thin beams of moonlight spill through cracks in the stone ceiling, touching the parchment with a glow that feels almost deliberate, almost attentive. With slow, reverent hands, you unfurl the map across a table worn smooth by centuries of quiet study. The parchment sighs as it opens, a long, gentle exhalation, as though releasing a memory held too tightly for too long. What lies before you is not a chart of rivers and borders, or trade routes and towns. It is something else entirely. Lines spiral inward like sleeping galaxies. Symbols dangle from the edges like falling stars. Curved strokes weave through the parchment with the grace of drifting smoke, as if the map itself is trying to speak in the language of constellations. Some marks form what could be valleys, but they are shaped like verses, curving as though written in poetry. Some marks resemble mountains, but their peaks align exactly with certain ancient legends. Names whispered in old temples and campfires along forgotten trade routes. And the seas, they carry no names at all, only symbols. Spirals, small eclipses, tiny circles, half shaded as though marked by the moon. Vespers tell us that no one knows who first drew this map. Some believe it was a wanderer who traveled the world guided not by direction, but by intuition. Some say it was a poet whose dreams were so vivid that they spilled onto parchment in the shape of lands yet unseen. Others believe the map is far older than ink, older than language, perhaps drawn by hands not entirely human. You run your fingers gently across its surface. The parchment feels warm, alive, in a way parchment shouldn't be. The ink is faded yet impossibly sharp, as if resistant to the erosion of centuries. As you lean closer, the lines seem to shift, ever so slightly, like stars repositioning themselves when no one is looking. It is said the map reveals itself differently to each person who studies it. To some, it shows continents. To others, memories. To a rare few, it shows the places they have never walked, but have always carried inside their hearts. You sense, with the softness of intuition, that this is not a map of geography. This is a map of consciousness, a chart of inner terrains, a guide for wanderers seeking truths that lie beyond the world's edges. You step back and imagine the long journey this parchment has taken. Long ago, the map was said to have been found in the satchel of a traveler who collapsed at the gates of a desert monastery. He spoke no words, only offered the map to the monks before closing his eyes for the final time. The monks unrolled it once, just once, and in its swirling lines they saw their own faces reflected as if in water. Some said the map understood them more deeply than they understood themselves. Others refused to touch it again, fearing the quiet revelations it pressed into the heart. In forgotten corners of the world, the map reappeared across centuries. In the hands of scholars who felt both wonder and unease, in the writings of travelers who claimed the map led them into landscapes where the boundaries between thought and terrain blurred like morning mist. One scholar wrote, "The map does not guide feet, it guides perception. Where it leads is inward." Another wrote, "I followed its path and returned with my eyes softened. I cannot explain why." And yet another, in a trembling script, confessed, "I saw valleys, shaped like feelings I never had names for." You inhale softly. The chamber around you feels thicker now, denser, as though the walls themselves are leaning in to listen. You study one particular mark, a curved line descending into what seems like shadow. Beside it, a cluster of tiny stars is drawn in a spiral, their arrangement matching a constellation no longer visible in modern skies. It is said the map showed both shadow and starlight, both descent and ascent, a dual path for those willing to journey through the quiet depths of their own being. You trace the line downward. It leads to a symbol, a hollow circle surrounded by tiny dots. Some interpret this as a lake, others as an ancient city, others still as a metaphor for a moment in life when one must pause and listen to the silence within. You continue tracing. The lines grow narrower, more delicate, more dreamlike. Ridges become thoughts, contours become memories. By the time you reach the lower edge of the map, you've forgotten whether you are exploring parchment or exploring yourself. The map's history is filled with travelers who set out after studying it. Some journeyed into forests and returned years later with eyes that shimmered like starlight on water. They spoke softly, as though afraid their voices might disturb something delicate inside them. Others sailed into unknown seas, searching for islands marked not by names but by crescents of ink. When they returned, if they returned, they spoke of horizons that felt like breathing beings, of waves that rose to meet them as though whispering secrets. A rare few were never seen again. Some say they crossed into lands that exist only in spirit. Some say the map swallowed them, folding them gently into its inked lines like thoughts were returning to the mind that conceived them. One tale speaks of a wanderer who followed the map into a valley that wasn't truly a valley. but a state of stillness where time thinned like the last ember of a dying flame. He returned with a scroll of his own, though the scroll was blank. When asked what he had found, he simply said, "There are places words are not permitted to follow." You breathe deeply, letting these stories settle like dust across your thoughts. The lantern flame flickers, shadows sway, and suddenly you sense something. A fragile shift, a subtle movement in the parchment before you. The map is folding itself, not dramatically, not unnaturally, but gently, almost shyly, as though it has shared enough for now, as though it knows that wisdom given too quickly does not endure. Its corners lift slightly, its edges curling inward like the petals of a flower closing for the night. You place your hand upon it, offering stillness, gratitude, understanding. The map relaxes, settling into shadow. For a moment, the chamber is completely silent. The lantern dims. The air thickens with quiet, and you feel the presence of countless wanderers who once stood where you stand, their hopes and fears woven into the lines that just whispered to you. Perhaps the map was never meant to be understood fully. Perhaps it was only meant to be touched, to awaken some hidden chamber within those who dared to seek it. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And tonight, beneath the soft breath of lantern light, you have heard its echo. You roll the map with gentle hands. Its parchment resists slightly, then yields, folding into itself like a dream, withdrawing into the quiet recesses of sleep. Its final destination remains uncertain. Perhaps it will find another scholar. Perhaps it will wait centuries for someone with a heart soft enough to read between its fading lines. Perhaps it will vanish as suddenly as it appeared, returning to shadow, to starlight, to whatever realm first gave it form. You place it back on the stone table. The lantern flickers once, twice, then settles. The chamber grows still, and as you turn to leave, you feel the map watching, not with eyes, but with presence, quietly choosing whether to reveal itself again in another night, to another seeker, in another lifetime. Outside, the night sky stretches wide, the stars aligned in patterns that whisper of journeys yet to come. Perhaps the map has guided you far deeper than you know, and perhaps in dreams, its lines will unfold again, leading you gently into shadow, into starlight, into the quiet places where memory fades and meaning waits. The gate of the Wind-Borne kings. It is said that in lands where the wind forever wanders, carrying secrets from one horizon to the next, there stands a stone arch so weathered, so ancient, that it seems less a structure and more a memory, a gateway carved not by hands, but by breath. And tonight, beneath the pale shimmer of a fading dusk, you approach that arch. A lone sentinel rising from a vast plateau where the wind has never stopped singing. The ground here is smooth, polished by centuries of restless air. Pebbles shimmer with dust carried from distant deserts. The sky stretches endlessly in a soft wash of clay red and muted gold, the kind of sky that feels not above you but around you. A great quiet dome where the world breathes in slow ancient rhythm. The arch stands at the plateau's center, a halo of stone carved with swirling lines that mimic the curls of a rising breeze. Its surface is rough, etched by time, its edges chipped like broken feathers. But even in ruin, It possesses a presence, a gentle majesty that invites you to step closer. It is said this arch once marked the entrance to a kingdom unlike any other, a kingdom not carved from conquest, nor built on the bones of rival realms, but shaped from harmony, from a profound communion between its rulers and the elements themselves. They were called the Wind-Borne kings, kings whose sovereignty was not imposed by the sword, but bestowed by the quiet language of the air. Some believe they could speak with the wind, not with words, but with breath, with intention, with stillness so deep that even storms bowed before them. Others whispered that the winds carried their names into distant lands long before travelers ever arrived, as if the air itself announced their coming. You place your hand upon the arch, feeling its cool surface pulse faintly beneath your fingertips. The stone is worn, crumbled in places, yet still sturdy, still listening to the wind that curls through it like a wandering spirit. Beyond the arch, the plateau expands into what was once the heart of their kingdom. Now only silence remains. But it is not an empty silence. It carries layers, whispers, echoes, the faintest touch of forgotten footsteps woven into the land's memory. You step across the threshold. The wind greets you with a long, low sigh. Not cold, not harsh, but soft, as though acknowledging your presence. The ruins of the kingdom lie scattered across the plateau, their remnants rising like islands of time from their ocean of sand. Stone platforms, once used for ceremonies, rest in shallow depressions. Circular arrangements of stones resemble great wheels meant to track the patterns of storms and seasons. Feathers, bleached by sun and dust, still cling to some of the altars. It is said the people of this land held feathers sacred, symbols of surrender, of lightness, of letting oneself be carried by forces greater and more ancient than ambition. Silver dust, scattered lightly upon the altars, gleamed under moonlight during their nightly gatherings. It shimmered like ground starlight, drifting into the wind as an offering. You kneel beside one such altar now, running your hand over its smooth, circular surface. The silver dust is gone, taken by time. But faint traces remain, tiny flecks embedded in the stone that catch the dying light with quiet shimmer. Some archaeologists believe this dust was nothing more than powdered mica or pyrite. Others argue that its composition does not match any known mineral in this region. But the people themselves believe the dust was a gift from the wind. Particles carried from mountains and deserts and distant horizons, gathered by the air and delivered to this place as a blessing. You stand, and the wind rises with you. A small whirl of dust lifting at your feet and drifting across the plateau like a tiny spirit. You follow it. It leads you to a cluster of towering stones arranged in a wide semicircle. These may have once been pillars supporting a great hall, or perhaps they were always standing alone, functioning as open-air observatories for the movement of storms and celestial currents. Each stone is etched with spirals and feather-like grooves. Some carvings resemble birds caught mid-flight. Others resemble gusts of wind frozen in stone. One pillar leans at a dramatic angle, its base partially eroded. You notice inscriptions running along its side, delicate lines like trails of smoke. You trace them with your fingertips. They speak not of war, nor of royal decrees, but of harmony. they describe the king as the one who listens to what cannot be seen, and the queen as the voice that speaks through silence. Another line reads, "Power is a breath. Hold it gently, or it leaves." You step back. The wind circles the pillars, humming softly as it rushes through cracks and hollows, filling the ruin with a music older than human song. In forgotten corners of the plateau, you find the remains of dwellings. Simple stone structures with wide openings to let the wind pass through. Roof beams lie scattered, long since surrendered to time. Each home seems positioned not with precision, but with intuition, as though built to catch the exact breeze that brought comfort, clarity, or guidance to its inhabitants. It is said the Wind-Borne kings taught their people to live lightly, to see the world not as something to be conquered, but as something to be carried gently. They believed in the sacredness of breath, each inhale a communion with the world, each exhale a release of fear. The people practiced a form of meditation where they stood at the edge of the plateau with arms open, letting the wind move through them like an unseen river. Some said the wind spoke to them in subtle shifts, a sudden warmth, a soft chill, a playful gust. Small messages that guided choices and shaped destinies. Others believed the wind carried the voices of their ancestors. Soft echoes woven into the constant song of the plateau. But then, something changed. You walk toward a shallow trench where an inscription is carved deeply into the earth. The wind grazes its surface like a whispering hand. The inscription speaks of their final days. It tells of a night when the wind's voice grew unusual. Not harsh, not frightening, but deliberate, focused, as though calling with intention. The Wind-Borne kings gathered at the arch with their people and listened. For hours, for perhaps an entire night, they stood waiting. And then, as dawn approached, the inscription ends abruptly, not with explanation, not with farewell, just a final line. We step through. You walk back toward the arch at the plateau's center. The sky has darkened into deep blue, the sun long buried beyond distant hills. The wind grows stronger now, twisting around the arch in spirals, lifting small clouds of dust into the air. You close your eyes. For a moment, you can almost sense them. The kings, the queens, the people, standing exactly where you stand, their robes fluttering, their eyes calm, faces turned toward the rising wind. Perhaps they believed their time had ended. Perhaps they felt their kingdom had achieved its purpose. Perhaps the wind invited them home. Some say they vanished into the air itself, not in death, but in transformation, a dissolution not of defeat, but of completion. Others believe they walked into a realm beyond sight, a kingdom not of stone but of movement, of breath, of pure intention. The ache that gathers in your chest is gentle, not sorrowful. For if any people ever understood the art of letting go, it was them. You step beneath the arch. The wind rushes through it with a long, tender exhale, as though greeting you, as though remembering you from a time you do not recall. The plateau hums. Dust swirls. The world grows soft. And somewhere in the wind you hear it. A faint echo, a final farewell, carried across ages. A reminder that power is not always weight or dominance or command. Sometimes power is gentleness. Sometimes power is release. Sometimes, power is choosing to dissolve into the vastness, rather than remain rooted in the world's noise. You take one last breath of the cool, ancient air. The wind wraps around you, soft as linen, brief as a sigh. And as the night folds over the plateau, you feel the presence of the Wind-Borne kings drift past. Lighter than dust, brighter than memory. Perhaps they were never meant to be found. Perhaps their kingdom still moves among us, in every breeze that brushes the face, in every sigh of night air that carries comfort to a restless heart. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And tonight, in the quiet hum between earth and sky, you hear them. The orchard where time moved like honey. It is said that in forgotten valleys, those that lie between the folds of the world like quiet breaths held by the earth, there are places where time loosens its grip, places where minutes drift like petals in a slow river, and hours settle gently, like dust caught in a late afternoon sunbeam. Tonight, you walk toward one of those places. The dusk is soft, a muted wash of faded copper and deep lavender, the kind of light that makes the world feel tender, as though it is preparing not for darkness, but for dreaming. You enter a narrow pass between moss-covered cliffs, their surfaces glowing faintly with residual warmth from the sun. The air grows sweeter, the wind grows slower, and then you hear it. A sound so delicate you almost mistake it for memory. The sound of falling blossoms. You step into a hidden valley, and before you lies the orchard where time moved like honey. The orchard stretches in quiet rows, but not the ordered rows of modern cultivation. These trees are ancient. Their trunks spiraling upward in slow, deliberate twists, their branches curved like the arcs of crescent moons. Their bark is thick and dark, worn by centuries of soft winds, their roots rising and falling over the earth like sleeping serpents. Blossoms fall from the branches in a slow, drifting motion. So slow they seem suspended, each petal drifting like powdered moonlight released from some gentle, celestial hand. You lift a hand toward the falling petals. One lands on your palm. It is cold in a way that feels luminous, like the coolness of starlight. It dissolves a moment later, leaving a faint shimmer that fades into your skin. A quiet question rises within you, soft as breath. Can a place slow the rhythm of existence? The orchard answers not with sound, but with stillness. Everything here feels softened. Moments lengthen, thoughts deepen. Your heartbeat slows as though matching the ancient pulse hidden beneath the soil. It is said the people who once lived here believed the valley was a cradle of sacred time, a sanctuary where the universe revealed its slower, gentler movements to those willing to sit and listen. You follow a winding path marked by smooth stones half sunk into the earth. The trees arch overhead, their branches forming a natural hall where the ceiling is a whispering tapestry of leaves and fading blossoms. As you walk, you notice small objects resting among the roots of the oldest trees. Carved bowls, their surfaces etched with spirals resembling the slow unfurling of moments. Delicate instruments shaped from reeds and bone. Tiny flutes, simple chimes, crafted not for performance, but for contemplation. When you lift one, the faintest note escapes. So soft you wonder if the sound is real, or merely your imagination brushing against silence. Some instruments still shimmer faintly, with a golden residue, as though someone once dipped them in a nectar-like substance. Local lore calls that substance the honey of hours. You continue onward and reach the heart of the orchard, a clearing bathed in diffused light. The grass here is thick and soft, glowing faintly in the dusk. In this place, the air feels heavy and yet delicate, as though time itself has gathered here to rest its weary limbs. It is said that elders once gathered the young ones beneath these trees to teach them the sacred geometry of patience. They taught that each moment is like a drop of honey, dense, sweet, and deserving of attention. They taught that rushing through life was like spilling honey from a jar, a loss both needless and irreversible. Some elders described time not as a line, but as a circle, looping back on itself like the rings of the ancient trees. Others compared it to the orchard's nectar, thick and golden, its sweetness deepening the longer it is held. When you slow down, they said, you taste the world. When you hurry, you merely swallow it. You pause beneath a tree whose branches have grown so wide they nearly touch the ground. Its bark is carved with symbols that resemble spirals, perfect circles interrupted by small notches. Perhaps a record of seasons, perhaps a record of rituals, perhaps simply a meditation etched into bark. You sit beneath the tree, feeling the weight of stillness settle into your bones. The orchard's silence is not empty. It is full of suspended breath, full of stories that drift through the air the way petals drift through dusk. Historians who studied this place found only fragments. Bits of pottery, pieces of instruments, faint illustrations of circular gatherings beneath curved branches. From these remnants, they speculate that a small contemplative culture flourished here. A people who preferred reflection over ambition, presence over progress, moments over monuments. Curiously, the orchard appears only briefly in ancient records. A few scrolls mention it as a place where time thickens. One dusty manuscript refers to it as the valley where hours sleep. But after a certain date, all mention of it disappears. Some believe the orchard fell to drought or disease. Others suggest the valley was intentionally erased, its location hidden to protect its sacred slowness from the rushing world beyond. A rare tale claims the orchard itself chose to veil its presence, withdrawing like a gentle spirit seeking quietude. When travelers try to find it now, they walk and never arrive. Only those who move slowly, without desire or destination, find themselves drawn into its embrace. Here, beneath its branches, you understand why. Time does not stop here. It simply unfurls, stretches, opens like a flower that blooms only at dusk. You sit longer, letting your breath align with the orchard's gentle rhythm. The falling petals drift past your gaze so slowly, you feel as if you can see each moment suspended between heartbeats. Your thoughts soften. Your worries untangle. The edges of the world blur into a dreamlike hush. Perhaps this is what those ancient people sought. Not immortality, but the ability to dwell more fully in each golden second. As night deepens, the orchard changes. The blossoms that were pale and moonlit begin to glow faintly, as though absorbing the last traces of daylight. Their shimmer grows subtle, then more pronounced, until the trees themselves appear dusted with starlight. A breeze moves through the valley, slow, careful, as though mindful not to disturb the delicate stillness. The branches sway like ancient dancers, each movement stretching for long, dreamy seconds. In the far corner of the clearing, A cluster of small stone markers catches your eye. They are arranged in a spiral, a symbol of a time looping, breathing, continuing. You walk to them and kneel. The stones carry faint carvings of fruit, of blossoms, of flowing nectar. The images look warm, tender, content. Perhaps they mark those who dedicated their lives to tending the orchard. Or perhaps they are simply reminders that time, like honey, should be savoured, held close, allowed to linger. You rise slowly. The orchard around you glows softly in dreamlike dusk. The trees shimmer, their blossoms falling with impossible grace. The air grows thick with the scent of sweetness and earth. And as you take in the valley's quiet magnificence, you sense something subtle, a faint hum, a soft vibration, as though the orchard is singing. Not in notes, but in moments. Moments suspended, moments deepened, moments thickened like golden nectar held in the palm of night. Perhaps that is why the orchard disappeared from history. Perhaps the world grew too hurried to understand it. Perhaps the valley closed its doors to protect what remained. Or perhaps it waits, for hearts slow enough to feel its rhythm, for travelers gentle enough to taste its sweetness. You stand in the center of the clearing one last time, letting the world grow heavy and soft and slow. The orchard does not ask you to understand it. It does not ask you to discover its secrets. It asks only that you linger, that you breathe, that you let time settle like honey through your thoughts. And as you close your eyes, you feel yourself sinking into a quiet so deep and tender, it feels like a cradle. Perhaps the orchard was never meant to be found by many. Perhaps its purpose was not to hold history, but to hold stillness. Some voices only echo when we are ready to hear them. And tonight, in the soft slowing of the world, you hear the orchard's whisper. A whisper shaped like a sigh, like falling blossoms, like the golden drift of hours moving not forward, but inward. And as sleep begins to gather at the edges of your thoughts, the orchard settles around you, timeless, gentle, and luminous. An ancient valley where time moves like honey. The temple that waited for the returning star. It is said that in the deep hours of night, when the world softens into quiet silver and the breath of the earth grows slow, some places begin to glow with a light not their own. And tonight, beneath a sky shimmering with ancient starlight, you walk toward one of those places. A solitary temple, standing alone on a windswept plateau as if the heavens themselves placed it there. The land around it is empty, a vast expanse of stone and quiet shadow. But the temple rises like an outstretched hand, an open palm offered to the universe. The stones gleam faintly, dyed pale blue by the cold light of the stars overhead. No fire burns here, no torch, yet the temple glows, its edges outlined by a celestial radiance that seems to come from a time long before memory. As you step closer, a soft question gathers at the edge of your thoughts. Can a place wait? Can a place hold its breath through generations, hoping for the return of a single point of light? The temple answers with silence. You cross the threshold, passing between two towering pillars carved with spirals and faint star markings. Their surfaces feel warm beneath the touch of your hand, though no sun has touched them in hours. Inside, the air is still in a way that feels deliberate, as though the space itself is holding its breath. The walls rise high and elegant, their smooth surfaces carved with constellations. But they are not constellations as we know them today. They are older, arranged according to a sky that no longer exists. Lines connect the stars in patterns resembling birds, waves, serpents, and what might be the winding path of a single star traveling across the heavens. This star, bright, wandering, revered, was the heart of the civilization that once gathered here. It is said, the people believed this star to be alive, a celestial traveler who moved not with the fixed march of constellations, but with the gentlest drift of a soul seeking home. They watched it for centuries. They aligned their temple with its movements. They carved its story into pillars and altars, and even the pattern of the stones beneath your feet. Whispers tell us that this star completed a long luminous cycle, vanishing for lifetimes only to return as a herald of renewal and cosmic harmony. And so, this temple was built as a place of welcome, a place of return, a place where the heavens and the earth could meet. You walk deeper into the sanctuary. The floor is made of polished stone, reflecting the starlight that falls through a circular opening in the roof above. At the center of the chamber lies the focal point of the temple. A great curved platform shaped like an open palm turned upward, as if offering a gift or receiving one. The palm faces the sky with perfect alignment. Its surface is smooth, yet marked with dozens of tiny depressions, as though droplets of light once rested here. The people believed that when the wandering star returned, it would pass through the opening above and cast its light directly into the palm, filling the chamber with a glow so pure that it would awaken the spirit of every person present. They gathered for generations, watching, waiting, listening to the slow turning of the heavens. Their nights were long, their patience endless. They believed time was a partner, not an obstacle. You imagine them now, figures dressed in woven robes, kneeling along the edges of the temple's interior. The flicker of oil lamps casting gentle shadows across their serene faces. Elders lifting their hands toward the night sky with reverence, children tracing the star carvings along the walls with small fingers. Their rituals were quiet, calming, like breathing with the universe. They did not worship the star as a god. They honored it as a companion, a distant wanderer whose journey mirrored their own. And because the star visited only once in many lifetimes, it shaped their culture in profound ways. They taught patience as the highest virtue. They valued continuity, devotion, gentle faith. Not in reward, but in rhythm. The return of the star was not expected in a single lifetime. It was a promise passed from one generation to the next. A promise held like a delicate lantern in the hands of those who knew they might never see its fulfillment. Yet still, they waited. But then, as centuries rose and fell, like the slow tide of time, the wandering star did not reappear. There were nights when the temple filled with hopeful watchers as the heavens shifted above them. Nights when the sky seemed ready to deliver the returning glow. But each time, the star did not come, and gradually the gatherings grew smaller. Families drifted away from the plateau. The patient rituals carried on by only the most devoted. Oil lamps burned lower, chants grew softer. Until one night, the final watchers, a small group of elders, came to the temple and waited. The sky was clear, the air cool. The moon hung low against the horizon. The elders sat in silence for hours beneath the circular opening. And when dawn approached, they rose, bowed to the empty sky and walked away. No one returned again. In time, their entire society dissolved with the gentleness of sand slipping between fingers. No war, no calamity, no lost battle. Only a quiet fading. Some say they simply lost faith. Others believe they chose to leave because the star's absence meant their purpose had been fulfilled in ways unseen. A rare whisper suggests that the star's return was never meant to be literal, that it was a luminous metaphor, guiding a people toward unity, toward patience, toward harmony with the slow rhythms of existence. Perhaps the star lived not in the sky, but in their gentle way of being. You step back toward the temple's center. The open palm of stone seems to glow faintly under the night sky. The stars above quietly shimmer, ancient, patient, each one carrying the light of centuries. A soft breeze moves through the opening in the roof, settling across your shoulders like a tender hand. You sit on the floor beside the open palm altar, letting the cool stone support your weight. For a moment, you imagine the temple as it once was, filled with warm bodies, soft voices, gentle anticipation. You imagine the star, bright and wandering, moving slowly through the sky, searching for the temple that waited for it. And then, in the quiet of your imagination, you see it, a faint light on the horizon, not bright, not bold, just a subtle shimmer, the kind a tired traveler might carry at the end of a very long journey. It rises, slow and tentative, as though uncertain if this is still the place that waits for it. The temple stones catch the faint glow, the carvings shimmer. The open palm fills with the softest silver light. It may be truth. It may be dream. It may be memory returned from a distant corner of the universe. But in this quiet moment, the star feels real. More real than the walls around you. More real than your own breath. It hovers above the temple, casting its glow into the waiting palm as though completing the cycle promised across generations. And as the chamber fills with this imagined radiance, you understand. Some stories do not end because their truths are literal. They continue because their meanings are carried in the heart. Perhaps the star never truly vanished. Perhaps it lived not in the sky, but in every act of patient hope, in every ritual performed without expectation, in the quiet faith of a people who believed the universe breathed with them. You rise slowly from the temple floor. The faint light fades. The star settles back into memory. The stones dim. The night softens. And the silence deepens into something sacred. Perhaps the star was never meant to be found. Perhaps it waits still. Not in the sky, but in the moments when the world grows quiet enough for wonder. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And tonight, under ancient starlight, you have heard one, the monastery hidden in the fold of dawn. It is said that dawn does not simply arrive. It unfurls, a slow, tender breath stretching across the horizon, revealing the world with gentle fingertips of gold. Tonight, or perhaps in some deeper moment of the soul, you walk toward a place where dawn once revealed more than light. A monastery tucked into a crease of stone, hidden so delicately within the mountain range that it seems woven from the very silence between night and day. The air is cool, thin with altitude, and filled with the faint scent of cold earth and pine. Above you, the mountains rise like ancient guardians, their peaks wearing the first blush of morning, a soft wash of rose, amber, and pale blue. As you climb the last ridge, the monastery comes into view. It sits carved into the mountain face, not built but revealed, as though the rock had one day exhaled and offered forth its hidden chambers. Its walls glow faintly under the newborn light, their surfaces smoothed by wind and time, their edges softened until they resemble the curves of a sleeping giant's ribs. For a long moment, you simply stand there, listening, not to sound, for the monastery is silent, but to presence. The presence of a place that has witnessed countless dawns and kept each one like a memory folded between pages of stone. Whispers tell us that the monks who lived here believed dawn was a living being, a presence with breath and intention, a teacher whose lessons could only be understood in the liminal hour when darkness loosens and light has not yet fully claimed the world. They rose before the first bird stirred from its perch. They sat in silence on cold stone floors as the sky ripened into soft shades of awakening. And in those moments, when the air held its most delicate balance, the monks listened for truths subtle enough to slip between heartbeats. You walk toward the entrance arch, its frame carved with gentle spirals symbolizing the slow unfolding of light. The stone is cool beneath your fingertips, yet it hums faintly, as though remembering the chance once offered here. You step inside. The interior hall is long and narrow, its ceiling curved like the inside of a shell. Faint lines of gold run along the stone, catching the dawn's light and guiding it deeper into the sanctuary. Your footsteps echo gently, overlapping with the ghostly memory of countless others. It is said the monks spent their lives in the art of awakening, not waking from sleep, but waking into consciousness, waking the heart, waking the spirit. They believed that force was unnecessary, that growth happened in the same way dawn happened, softly, inevitably, with patience. At the end of the hall lies a circular chamber. You enter, and the world around you seems to inhale. Light pours through an opening high above, falling in a single luminous column that touches the stone floor like a blessing. This chamber, known in old scrolls as the Heart of Dawn, was constructed with perfect intention. Its curves are designed to catch the rising sun at the exact angle where its rays would resonate against the walls and create a warm echo, a hum, a tone, a gentle note, as if dawn itself were singing. There is no sound now, only the faint sigh of morning wind drifting through narrow passageways. Yet if you close your eyes, you can almost hear it. The ancient resonance, like the low vibration of a distant bell, like breath moving through hollow stone. You linger here, letting the memory of sound settle into your bones. You wander deeper. The monastery's halls twist and fold, like the inside of a sleeping serpent. Some rooms are small, just enough space for a single mat and a small bowl used for offerings of water. Other chambers are vast and open, their floors covered in delicate patterns made from crushed mica that still glitters faintly. Here, the monks practice the art of balance. Not physical balance, though they valued that too, but balance between thought and breath, between action and stillness, between longing and acceptance. In forgotten corners of the monastery, you find their remnants. Scrolls so faded, their ink resembles the faint impression of a dream on waking mind. Ceramic bowls etched with spirals and crescent shapes, indicating cycles of practice. Stone tablets carved with teachings. One tablet reads, "Do not chase the dawn, become it." Another, light teaches slowly. And a third, awakening is not a moment. It is a direction. You trace the carvings with your fingertips, feeling the grooves where hands long gone once pressed their wisdom into the world. And yet, there is no sign of departure, no scattered belongings, no unfinished meals, no evidence of sudden disaster, only a quiet, gentle absence that feels deliberate. It is said the brotherhood ended not in tragedy, but in silence. Their writings end abruptly, not in panic, but simply cease. Some believe they walked into the mountains, never to return. Others believe they dissolved into the thin morning air with such subtlety that even the world did not notice. A few old songs suggest something stranger, that the monks stepped into the dawn itself, passing beyond the threshold of visible light into some realm where day and spirit merge. You pause in one of the far chambers. It is small and shaped like a crescent, with a narrow opening that frames the horizon. Through it, the sun continues to rise. Its light pours into the chamber like liquid amber, filling the air with warmth and softening the world into a dreamlike haze. You can imagine the monks sitting here, eyes half closed, breath slow, receiving the dawn as though receiving a teacher. Perhaps this very room was where they listened for the subtle shift between darkness and light, between sleep and waking consciousness. The air is thick with golden stillness. The walls glow. Dust motes drift like tiny suspended suns. And for a moment, you understand their devotion. Dawn is not merely the beginning of day. It is a threshold, a moment of becoming, a moment where the world is neither one thing nor the other, but a delicate blend of both. And in that blend, the monks found meaning. You continue wandering. More chambers, more quiet, more light settling into forgotten corners. And finally, you reach the outer terrace, a long stone ledge that overlooks a sweeping valley below. The sun has risen higher now, its rays spilling across the floor of the terrace in threads of soft gold. You stand at its edge. A breeze sweeps past, carrying the faintest scent of warm rock and distant pine. Below you, the valley stretches endlessly, its surface glowing in morning hues. The monastery behind you seems almost to disappear into the stone, as though reluctant to disturb the day. And in this quiet, you sense something. A soft echo, not of sound, but of presence. You imagine the brotherhood in their final moments, standing here, faces lit in gold, eyes soft, breathing the dawn, understanding something so profound, so gentle, that words would only diminish it. Perhaps they stepped forward, not into death, but into light, into a place where awakening is neither beginning nor ending, but simply existence. The breeze grows warmer, the sun lifts higher, and a hush settles over the terrace. Dawn's lesson has been given. The light moves on. You step back into the shadow of the monastery's entrance. The rooms behind you are quiet. The light has receded from their walls. Once more, the monastery stands in quiet solitude, a sacred remnant hidden in the fold of dawn. Perhaps it was never meant to be found by many. Perhaps its purpose lies not in answers, but in atmosphere. A reminder that awakening is a soft thing, a slow thing, a thing revealed in the gentlest hours of the day. Some voices only echo when we are ready to hear them. And tonight, in the hush before sleep, You have walked through dawn's quiet chambers. The road, marked by vanishing footsteps. It is said that in forgotten realms, where the horizon stretches like an unending breath, there lies a road so faint, so delicately carved into the earth, that it appears only at certain angles of light. When dusk bends gently against the land, or when the moon hangs low and reveals what daylight keeps hidden. Tonight, under a sky fading into muted shades of lavender and deep blue, you arrive at the beginning of that road, a lonely, narrow scar etched across a barren plain, its edges softened by centuries of wind and the quiet drift of forgotten time. The plain itself feels ancient, a vast expanse of cracked earth and pale grasses that whisper with the slightest breeze. The air carries the scent of dust, salt, and something faintly sweet, like the memory of incense burned long ago. Before you, the road glows faintly, as if illuminated from beneath the surface. It is barely wider than the length of a hand, yet it stretches forward with a purpose that feels older than the land itself. A soft question settles in your thoughts. Who first walked this way? And why does the earth remember their steps even after the footsteps have vanished? You take your first step onto the road. The earth beneath you feels smoother here, worn gently by countless souls. Pilgrims, seekers, wanderers, whose names and faces have dissolved into the quiet of history. Whispers tell us that this road once formed the heart of a sacred migration, not a journey of desperation or exile, but one of devotion. Travelers moved along this path not to reach a place, but to reach a moment, a meeting place between the living and the remembered, between breath and echo, between now and what lingers just beyond the veil of memory. Their steps were slow, deliberate, each stride a ritual of intention. Some carried small stones, others carried feathers. A few carried painted clay marked with spirals and crescent shapes, symbolizing cycles of return. These offerings, entrusted to the earth at intervals, still appear in fragments today, unearthed by archaeologists or revealed by shifting dunes of sand. You kneel beside one such fragment now, a shard of clay, its surface smoothed but still showing traces of deep red pigment. A faded spiral curls across it, like the imprint of a thought left behind by someone who believed that life turned in circles, not lines. You place the shard gently back on the ground. The road beckons you onward. As you walk, the plain grows quieter. The wind softens. The sky deepens. The last hints of daylight paint the road in soft gold, bringing it into momentary clarity. And then, as the angle shifts, it fades again, barely perceptible beneath your feet. This flickering presence feels intentional, as though the road is not meant to be seen continuously, as if the pilgrims who walked here did so in trust, following something not always visible, but always felt. It is said that the road responded to those who traveled it, that the earth brightened beneath their feet when their intentions were pure, and dimmed when their hearts faltered. Some elders whispered that the road was alive, a thin ribbon of land that listened for sincerity. Others claimed that the path led not to a place, but to a moment when the traveler felt ready to release something heavy. You continue walking, letting the soft rhythm of your steps blend with the quiet pulse of the evening. The air cools. The world fades into stillness. And somewhere far off, a bird calls. A single note resting in the wide silence. At intervals, you find remnants of the past, a cluster of small stones, arranged with too much care to be accidental. Their surfaces are warm from the day's sun, each one carrying a different shade of earth. Pale sand, deep gold, soft grey. You touch them lightly. These stones were offerings, tokens laid carefully along the journey as acts of quiet gratitude or small prayers left for the road itself. Farther along you find a feather. It is brittle now, its edges frayed by time and wind, but the faint trace of pale blue dye still clings to its quill. Feathers symbolized release, lightness, letting go. Those who traveled this road often carried objects they wished to surrender to the earth. Burdens, memories, worries that weighed their steps. And as they walked, they dropped feathers, one by one, until the weight inside them felt lighter. You feel the road shift beneath your feet, as though acknowledging the presence of those old rituals. Dusk deepens. The sky turns the color of faded copper and soft shadow. The plain glows in muted twilight, its edges blurring into the first kiss of night. The road grows fainter still. With each step, its surface becomes more suggestion than path, more idea than line. And yet, you feel it clearly. A subtle tug forward, a gentle pull as though guiding you not toward a destination, but toward a sensation, a feeling of accompaniment. For though the road is empty now, you do not feel alone. Something about the hush around you suggests presence. The faint echo of countless past footsteps walking beside yours. Pilgrims who moved with reverence, with humility, with quiet hope. It is almost as if the plain remembers them, as if the air still holds the warmth of their bodies, as if the wind still carries traces of their low chants while moving into the unknown. You close your eyes for a moment, and the echo of those footsteps drifts up from the earth. Soft, rhythmic, as ephemeral as starlight. You breathe it in. A gentle ache rises in your chest. The ache of imagining a people who believed that walking could transform the spirit. But then, a mystery emerges. You reach a point where the road simply stops. Not because the land ends, not because the earth rises or falls, not because of erosion. It stops in open plain, without explanation, without conclusion. Archaeologists searched for years beyond this point. No settlement, no shrine, no burial ground, no hidden chamber, nothing. Only the whispering plain. Some believe the road once continued, but was erased by time. Others suggest it ended intentionally. Not as a failure, but as a teaching. A reminder that some journeys are meant to end without arrival. A few old stories go further still, claiming that the end of the road was never meant to be found by the feet, but by the heart. The pilgrims who walked here were not seeking a place. They were seeking the quiet transformation that comes when one walks long enough to shed the unnecessary. Perhaps their journey concluded the moment they realized they had already arrived. Within themselves. You stand at the invisible edge where the road fades into twilight. The air is cool now. Stars begin to bloom across the sky, first one, then another, until the heavens become a field of quiet fire. The plain darkens into soft blue shadow, and the road beneath your feet grows pale, then dim, then gone, vanishing into the folds of night. A soft melancholy settles over you, not heavy, but gentle, like the final note of a long-forgotten song. You look back the way you came. The road reappears only in fragments, tiny segments catching the last threads of twilight. And just for a moment, you imagine figures walking there, shimmering silhouettes of ancient travelers moving with slow grace, their steps aligning with yours. Not haunting, not sorrowful, only present, only remembered. You breathe deeply and let the stillness wrap around you. Perhaps the pilgrims never intended to be found. Perhaps the road itself is a memory, offering gentle guidance to those who wander with openness. Some voices only echo when the world grows quiet enough to hear them. And tonight, in the soft twilight of the plain, you hear them. The footsteps of those who walk before you. Faint, rhythmic, vanishing. But not lost. Never lost. You take one final step toward the darkening horizon. The earth beneath you feels warm, full of memory. And as the last glow of daylight fades, the road disappears completely, leaving behind only the sensation that you have walked beside ghosts, and that in their silence they have shared with you a truth too gentle for words. You turn slowly, letting night gather around you. The plain is still. The sky is wide, and the vanished road rests quietly beneath the stars. A path that leads inward long after its footsteps have dissolved into dust. The kingdom lost to dust and memory. It is said that some places do not disappear. They simply drift beyond the reach of certainty. They linger like half-remembered dreams, like breaths caught between waking and sleep. Like dust suspended in a beam of late afternoon light. And tonight, carried on a breath of wind softened by the scent of ancient incense, you arrive at the threshold of the kingdom lost to dust and memory. The wind sighs gently across a barren plain, lifting small spirals of sand that shimmer in the fading daylight, like echoes rising from forgotten time. The air feels warm, hushed, expectant, as though the land itself has been waiting for someone to listen. Before you lie the remnants of a once radiant realm, stones scattered across the earth like broken constellations, each one etched with symbols so worn they resemble faint ripples on water. You kneel beside one, running your fingertips over the shallow grooves. A spiral, a star, a crescent, a single line. Curving, quiet, unfinished. The stone feels fragile, like a memory held too long. Beneath your touch, it trembles ever so slightly, as though uncertain whether to offer a story or continue resting in silence. You rise, stepping carefully onto what remains of the kingdom's outer path. The first thing you notice is the softness, not of the earth beneath your feet. That is firm, grounded, but of the world itself. The light feels muted, as though filtered through layers of time. Shadows blend gently into one another. The air holds a kind of tenderness that makes you slow your steps without meaning to. It is said this kingdom was built upon philosophies of balance, a realm where harmony was considered a form of power, where silence was revered as deeply as song. Their artisans crafted wonders not to dominate the land, but to converse with it. Their structures aligned with the arc of the sunsets, the tilt of the moon, the pulse of the seasons. They built with intention, with reverence, with an awareness that human hands were only temporary guests upon an ancient earth. You walk between the remnants of what might once have been tall pillars. Now each stands broken, a waist-high stump adorned with faint star markings. The carvings catch the last rays of the sun and gleam softly, as though the stones themselves remember their former luminous grandeur. The kingdom radiated beauty, not through gold or conquest or spectacle, but through alignment. A harmony woven between people and cosmos, breath and stone, intention and environment. Their chronicles speak of nights when the entire city glowed beneath the moon, its alabaster walls catching celestial light like thousands of tiny mirrors. Travelers described it as a place where stars seemed to settle onto rooftops to rest their weary brilliance. But now, only dust remains. Dust and faint fragrance of old incense clinging to the air. You walk deeper into the ruins. Streets unfold before you. Or what is left of them? Traces of pathways curve through the landscape like pale scars upon the earth. Small stones mark the edges, their arrangement too deliberate to be chance. You follow one such path, your steps slow, as though moving through the memory of a memory. The streets feel empty, but not abandoned. Rather, they feel resting, as though the kingdom's people stepped away only moments ago, leaving behind the warm ghost of their presence. A cracked basin sits to your left, once part of a public fountain. Inside, faint mosaics still linger. Shards of blue, green, and soft gold, glinting like fragments of a broken sunrise. You imagine water once flowing here. Clear, cool, reflecting the night sky during quiet festivals. Perhaps people gathered here to share stories, their voices drifting like smoke toward the heavens. But the chronicles disagree. Some describe this kingdom as vibrant, a realm of artisans, philosophers, and astronomers. Others paint it as melancholy, a place undone by sorrow too heavy for its gentle foundations to hold. One text speaks of prosperity and peace. Another describes a sudden shattering. A third refuses to explain anything at all. Contradictions weave through the records like tangled threads, each one tugging the story in a different direction. No single narrative makes sense of the silence that followed. Perhaps the kingdom was overwhelmed by drought, or by famine, or by unknown catastrophe. Or perhaps, as some whisper, the people simply chose to dissolve quietly into the land they cherished. You pause in the center of what might once have been a gathering square. Flat stones form a circle, cracked and faded. In their center lies a long slab, etched with the lines that spiral outward like a ripple in water. This, some believe, was called the Stone of Balance. Here, decisions were made. Not through debate, but through listening. Listening to breath, to silence, to the subtle shifts in the world around them. Imagine a council sitting in soft robes, the glow of dawn touching their faces, their hands resting gently in their laps. No raised voices, no heated words, only slow, thoughtful conversation, as if the kingdom itself spoke through them. It is said one could step onto the stone and feel the pull of the earth, a gentle reminder to ground one's choices in calm. You stand upon the stone now. The air stills. Your breath deepens. Something in the quiet touches the edges of your chest. A kind of ancient calm, as though the stone remembers its old purpose and is offering it to you. You linger there, not wanting to break the spell. As the sun dips lower, the sky glows with hues of amber and rose. Shadows stretch long between the broken pillars, moving like soft fingers stirring the dust. You wander into what remains of the living quarters, derelict outlines of humble homes. One doorway still stands, its wooden lintel rotted but its frame intact. You step inside and find fragments. A bowl, a cracked cup, a stone pendant shaped like a teardrop. These relics suggest a life of simplicity, woven gently into the rhythm of day and night. Yet something deeper stirs here. A faint echo of sorrow. Why did they leave? Where did they go? Why does the kingdom hum with a quiet ache impossible to name? You close your eyes and feel the weight of stories that prefer not to be fully told. Stories too delicate to survive the sharpness of explanation. Some memories dissolve when spoken aloud. Some truths survive only in silence. Twilight arrives softly, wrapping the ruins in blue shadow. The wind breathes again. Its voice is thin, whispered, like someone trying to speak from another lifetime. The scent of ancient incense returns, drifting faintly from some unseen corner. You follow the road back toward the edge of the kingdom, your footsteps slow, as though not wanting to wake the dust. The land grows dim. Stones fade into the folds of gathering darkness. Stars bloom overhead with quiet inevitability. A single breeze sweeps across the ruins, lifting grains of sand into soft spirals. For a moment, the kingdom shimmers, as though caught between presence and absence, between memory and forgetting. Perhaps that is what it has become. Not a place to be analyzed, not a story to be solved, but a feeling, a place meant to be felt, not understood. A realm where memory and dust share the same breath, blurring the line between history and dream. Your heart holds a gentle uncertainty, an ache that feels neither sad nor comforting, but something softer still. Perhaps the kingdom was never meant to reveal its truth. Perhaps its disappearance was a choice. A return to the earth, a merging with silence. Perhaps its people believed their greatest legacy was not architecture, nor philosophy, nor progress, but peace. And peace, like dust, is easily carried by the wind. You take one last look at the ruins. Stones pale in twilight, symbols glimmering faintly before darkness settles. They seem to breathe, slowly, gently, as though dreaming. Some voices only echo when the world grows quiet enough to hear them. Tonight, in the hush before sleep, you have walked among those echoes. And as you turn away, the kingdom folds back into dust and memory. Not lost, not gone, but resting softly in the tender space between forgetting and forever.